This video discusses using a nested while loop. We know that a while loop executes a block of statements repeatedly as long as the condition is true. To create a nested loop in Python, we can simply place a loop structure inside the block of the statements that is repeated by another loop structure. This is very similar to how we nest conditional statements as well. In other words, when we have been working with if statements. So to create a nested while loop in the pseudocode, I want to explain a little bit about the problem. The program is going to ask a user to enter a test score and check to make sure that the test score is not a negative value and it is not greater than 100. So to test the score to see if it is not a negative value and it is not greater than 100, that's going to be our inner while loop. The program then asks the user if they wish to enter another score. That will be our outer while loop. So the syntax would look something like this. A while loop to ask a user if they wish to enter a score. They enter the score. As soon as they enter the score, another while loop is going to be used to check to see if the score is less than 0 or greater than 100. If that's the case, the score, we will display a message saying there's an error. The score cannot be negative or it cannot be greater than 100. And they'll be prompted to enter the correct test score. After that happens, then in the outer loop, it will ask the user if they wish to enter a brand new score. Okay, so this is the syntax. Let's see what it looks like when we write it in Python. So let's look at the Python version of our pseudocode representing a nested while loop or nested while loops. So we initialize our loop control variable response to y. While response is equivalent to a lowercase or response is equivalent to an uppercase, we're going to get the test score. That's the outer while loop. We're going inside of that outer while loop, and inside of the outer while loop, we have an inner while loop. This inner loop is used to make sure that the test score is not less than 0 or it's greater than 100. So while the score, we'll just add parentheses around that, is less than 0 or the score is greater than 100, we're going to tell the program to print the error message saying that the score cannot be negative or it cannot be greater than 100. Enter the correct test score between 0 and 100. And it wouldn't be incorrect for us to say to re-enter it, because that's what you're doing. You're re-entering a test score, because this while loop is allowing the program to re-enter. The loop control variable for the inner loop is score. And whatever score we put in there is going to compare it against 0 or 100. And so that's why the score is going to change. Whenever you're working with a while loop, that while loop is controlled by the loop control variable. The loop control variable will be initialized. It has to be tested. And then it's going to be updated. That's the response loop. For the inner while loop, score is initialized because we enter the score. It is tested. It is updated. And as long as the score is less than 0 or greater than 100, this loop is going to be executed. That's the inner loop. The outer loop is controlled by the response. So we're making a change on that. So I'm going to put on here, update the loop control variable response, which is the loop variable that's controlling the outer loop. We will run the program to see the results here. Enter test score. We'll put in a negative 100 by mistake. So the inner loop is saying the score cannot be negative or greater than 100. Re-enter a correct test score between 0 and 100. So I'll put in 100. Now the outer loop now is saying, do you wish to enter a new test score? I can type in Y for yes. Just guess the test score 92. Enter another one. 110. It says that the test score cannot be negative or greater than 100. In this case, it is greater than 100. So I'm going to put in 87. Do you wish to enter the new test score? No. So the program halts at this point. So this is an example of using a while loop inside of another while loop. In other words, we're using a nested loop in this particular example. Again, every while loop is controlled by a loop control variable. That loop control variable must be initialized, it is tested, and it's updated. If I do not add this to update, I will end up with an infinite loop and my loop never ends. That's the outer loop. The inner loop, the loop control variable, it just so happens is score. It is initialized here. It is tested in the while loop heading, and then it is updated. It will end once we put in a correct score, and then it goes and asks us if we wish to enter a new test score. If you have questions, please contact me immediately for further instructions. Feel free to review this video as often as you need to.